Hello everyone, Simon here, and welcome to the architecture of Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Okay, I got that right. So, Deus Ex Mankind Divided came out quite a while ago now, but I'm finally getting to the architecture tour of it. Um, in this series of videos, we are only looking at the architecture. So I'm gonna go through all the levels and all the environments in the game and just gonna analyze the architecture. The game does have interesting architecture. Not perfect, but then it never is. I'll have some complaints along the way, but very interesting nevertheless. So let's get into it, right? Where are we? The game starts off in Dubai. So the first level is a bit of a tutorial level, as games usually are. Where are we? We are on a building. If we look outside, oh, there's the Burj Khalifa right there. The Burj Khalifa is famous for being comically large. it's of course the tallest building in the world. It's a comically large piece of architecture. That's the Burj Khalifa. In fact, let me just climb up here. Oh, there you go. And we're looking at the sunset behind the Burj Khalifa. Alright, what do we have to say about this? So before we start looking at the architecture, I have notes by the way, I am reading the notes a little bit. Before we start looking at the architecture, we do need a bit of background to understand the setting, because otherwise this stuff doesn't make sense if we don't know the setting, right? So if you're not familiar, Deus Ex is a series of games set in a science fiction near future where cybernetics is commonplace, and they call it augmentation in the game. So that's complicated. So we are in the future, and we have people who are half robots. They're cyborgs, right? So mostly you have brain implants to make people smarter, and you replace their limbs with robotic limbs, which are then stronger, faster, more precise. And our character, Adam Jensen, like his arms have weapons hidden in his arms. So there's his arms, his hands, and then he's got weapons built into his body, his robot body. There's also like lung upgrades and heart upgrades and leg upgrades and all that sort of stuff. So there's like augmented people, and they're stronger, faster, and smarter than natural human beings. And in the game, the main conflict, the main contradiction in the game is the potential of transcending human limitations using augmentation technology, become better than you were, right? That's the promise versus the loss of humanity, right? The flip side of this is the more you augment yourself, the less human you are, and a lot of people are against the fact that you're not human anymore, or that you're kind of giving up your humanity. So that's one of the big conflicts in the game is the contrast between what you can become with augmentation and what you lose when you augment, right? The story also features the Illuminati. So a fictional, wink wink, a fictional shadow organization who are the main antagonists. So the Illuminati, they are wealthy elites, and their goal is to maintain their power and wealth by controlling other people. So that's the main enemy in the Deus Ex series, right? So you as the main character, you're usually struggling for your own freedom and self-determination against the Illuminati's attempts to control the world. That's basically the story, right? In the last game, Deus Ex Human Revolution, at one point the Illuminati instigated the Aug incident, right? The Illuminati, to try to control all the augmented people, they put control chips into their brains. So all the augmented people, they got control chips put into their brains. And then one of them decided that we really need to clamp down on augmentations. And in order to convince people to clamp down on augmentations, the augmented people have to do something terrible. And so they instigated the Aug incident, which is when they used the control chip to drive all the augmented people insane, and all the augmented people went into a violent frenzy and killed a lot of people. So a lot of people died, a lot of things got destroyed, and in doing that, popular opinion turned against augmentations and augmented people. And so now in Mankind Divided, mankind is divided because of the Aug incident, leading to mistrust between the two groups. And now they're trying to ban augmentations. And this is how the Illuminati is trying to control augmentation, by convincing people that we need to ban these things, right? So that's the background story. And with all that in mind, we can explain why we are in a unfinished resort hotel. So this place is called the Desert Jewel. The Desert Jewel is a resort hotel in Dubai which was abandoned during construction. And the reason it was abandoned was because it was during construction when the Aug incident happened. All the workers were augmented because augmented people are stronger and faster, and so then you have them doing manual labor. But they all went crazy and trashed the work site, and so then the whole thing was abandoned. It seems a bit drastic to me. But after the Aug incident, they couldn't finish the building, and so this is why we have basically a half-finished, abandoned building. So before we start, this potentially raises some interesting ideas about the relationship between augmentation and architecture. Especially if augmented workers are stronger, right? Does that mean they build things differently? If they can lift heavier objects, does that mean they can use heavier tools? Or they can move larger building materials around? So, you know, like in our world we have bricks. Bricks are about this big. Why are bricks this big? Because you can lift them easily, right? Because, you know, I'm a human, I'm not that strong. If I want to lay bricks, I lay bricks like one at a time this big, because that's how I can carry a brick in one hand, right? Or like a concrete block is like bigger. Like, but we can't see it. A concrete block is about, it's bigger than my head, but a concrete block you can lift with two hands, right? You can take two hands and put the concrete block in place. And so building materials are the sizes that they are because of how strong humans are. If you make a giant block of stone, okay, that's cool, but how are you going to move it around, right? If you're not strong enough to move it around, then what's the point? So bricks are this big, concrete blocks are that big, because we can lift them. So then if you have augmented people, and they can lift heavier weights, does that mean you have bigger blocks to build with? You see what I mean? And like maybe like bigger tools. Maybe like, because we have hands, like with hand drills, hand saws. Like what if you're strong enough to hold a giant saw in your own hands? What does that mean? So like does architecture change if you have augmented people? So that's a very interesting idea to me, and unfortunately this building doesn't explore any of that. I will talk about how it doesn't explore any of that and why that's disappointing as we look through the building. But just like in the real world, I think it's very interesting to think about how robotics will change future architecture. And even now, things like 3D printing, people like 3D printing houses, like it's not really mainstream yet. They're still trying to work it out, trying to make it work. But you know, like technologies change what architectures are possible, right? And so that's something to think about. 3D printing, robotics, it might completely change how buildings are built. Anyway, back to the Desert Jewel. Where are we? Let's go ahead and look at a map. Oh, look, it's a map. So Dubai is here, right? So we have Africa, right? We have Europe, we have India. So we have Saudi Arabia, Iran, the Persian Gulf, and then Dubai is right there in the United Arab Emirates. Oh, actually, let me just go back here. You can see on the on up there, there's a mini map facing west. So Burj Khalifa is directly to the west of us. Keep that in mind. So Dubai is here. This is Dubai. We have palm shapes in Dubai, very funny. The Burj Khalifa is right there. If you look straight down at it, So there's the tower. You can see the massive shadow. See the shadow of the tower there? That's the shadow. So the tower is there, right? That thing. And according to the game, it is to our west. So we are to the east of the Burj Khalifa. We are actually somewhere here, probably. So there's a Dubai Creek. Look at that. It's open on this end, and then it's also open on this end. There's a bit of a lake here. This is called the Dubai Creek. So, given that we are in water, you can see how we are in the water. So that probably means we are in the Dubai Creek. I mean, we might be this thing. In the real world, this it's called the Dubai Creek Harbor. It's not a single building though, there's a collection of buildings in this artificial island here. Well, it's not really an island, artificial peninsula here. Right? It's good, there's like hotels and residential towers, a bit of a marina there. And that's curious because at first glance, you might assume that we were in the ocean, right? Dubai does have an ocean. We're on the wrong side, like the sun, that's the sunset. So you're on the wrong side. You might assume that we'd be somewhere out here because there's a lot of ocean out here, but actually we're not. In fact, if we look at the wiki, there's some concept art. This is not concept art, this is like an image you see in the game. And you look at this image, we are actually surrounded by water. Like you look at this, you might think, oh, we must be in the ocean or something. But no, we're not, because we're on the wrong side. The ocean is to the west of the Burj Khalifa, so then the sunset would be on the other side. I'm not sure what happened there. I think they had some ideas, but they didn't fit. Like they wanted to have the Burj Khalifa silhouetted against the sunset. Okay, they want that. And then they wanted this hotel on the water. Okay, they wanted that. But then, oh wait, no, the hotel, the ocean is on the wrong side for the sunset. Oh wait, there's water there, so they put it in the Dubai Creek. It's why, but why would you put this in the Dubai Creek? Because the Dubai Creek is not that big, and there's already something there, right? There's already something there. There's not really any space for it in the Dubai Creek. So, what's going on? Why would you do anyway? I think they just kind of fudged it, and then they tried to make it work. So if you look around here, right, look how big this area is. It looks like it should be the ocean, but it's not. We're on the wrong side. Yeah, it's a little strange. And you can hear the seabirds too. I don't know if there's seabirds in the Dubai Creek, but you would imagine that the birds would be closer to the ocean. Anyway, it looks cool. This looks really cool. So never mind what we had to do to get this done. As for the desert jewel itself, we do get better views later on, but for now we see that there's some curvy shapes over there. In fact, if I come this way, let me get over here, let me climb on top of this garbage bin. You can see there's like a curvy shape down there, and it curves up, and then there's like a main building over there, right? So this curvy shape, we provide a protected harbor in here, which is cool, right? It's cool that you have like ships come in if you want. Unfortunately, the shape of this looks a bit like a poop, a giant poop in the ocean. Because if you look at this, it looks a little bit like a giant turd, doesn't it? Oh no! Why does it look like poop? Well, partly it's because it's brown. Partly it's because it's like a thick... I mean, okay, look. I think the problem is they didn't draw enough concept art, right? Now, why does it look like poop? They do have concept art, by the way. This is the concept art. This looks less like poop, but you'll notice the proportions are a bit different. Like this is curvier. It's like it's flatter and less tall, and then this thing's a bit bigger there, and that looks like it extends further out. So the perspective, like because you're drawing a 2D picture, it's kind of hard to imagine the perspective. But if you imagine this whole thing was flatter and longer that way, then it looks less like a poop. So that's a problem. Like when you translate the concept art into in-game architecture, and especially when you have the limitations of a game engine. See this is a lot closer. Do you see that? Like this seems a lot closer than that is. This seems further away. So in the concept art, it's much bigger, and so the proportions are different, right? And the other issue is I don't think they drew other concept art. So they drew this view, right? Which is this view. But they didn't draw any of the other views, so you don't know what's behind here, right? Like, what's behind here? We don't know. Like, what's behind us? We don't know. And so if you imagine there's, like, other shapes out there, then it wouldn't look like a poop. Because the issue here is there's only one curve and there's no other shapes, and so it looks like poop. But if you imagine there's like something else here, and there's like other shapes here, maybe there's more of these. Maybe there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe it's like a tree, and this is only like one branch of it. Maybe there's like 6 or 8 branches on the tree, and this is only one of them. Then it wouldn't look like poop. It would look like a tree. But because it's only one curve and nothing else, and because of the proportions, it looks like poop, which is real unfortunate. Like I don't want to talk too much about this because I feel like an asshole complaining about the architecture. But it really does. And proportions are important, alright? Proportions are important. Because imagine you take a sports car. A sports car is like low and flat. If you change the proportions, right? You take the sports car and you just make it shorter this way. And then you make it taller this way. Like suddenly it stops being a sports car. And it starts being a clown car. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a sports... Like, this is not a sports car. This is a sports car. It's low and flat. And then this is not a sports car. So you change the proportions, it stops being a sports car. And it's the same thing with architecture, right? Like you take this, oh, it's a low, graceful curve, right? It's a kind of graceful curving shape. And then you change the proportions, and it stops being graceful and starts being a turd. So this is really subtle stuff, but if you get it wrong, it's just wrong, right? Like if you take a supermodel is tall and skinny, right? We know that. But if you like make her shorter, make her thicker, then she's not a supermodel anymore. She's a different person now. So like things like this is important. And when you try to translate concept art into a game level, you kind of have to be real careful about this, right? Like anyway. I don't think they did a great job with this particular shape, is what I'm saying. Let's not make too much of it though. But what I'm saying is, there's two things here. Proportions are important, one. Two, if you're going to draw concept art, draw the whole building. Draw multiple views of all sides of the building. Because if you only draw one view, and this is not even a good view because like, you're looking at the interior, you don't see that part of the building, you don't see the other part of the building, you don't see any other sides, you only see like one part of it, you're gonna lead to problems, right? Because architecture is 3D, okay? You have to see the whole thing in 3D. You can't just draw a building, one part of it, and just trust somebody else to make the rest of it look good. You can't trust other people, you have to draw all the views. So if you're gonna commission concept art for architecture, don't skimp. Don't just ask for one view, ask for multiple views, please. Because otherwise you end up with a turd. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But it's important. It is important. Okay. So here, let's look at the construction, right? What is this? If we look closely at this appears to be concrete. So just looking at this, oh that's concrete too, and then we have like steel reinforcing. So the concrete column would continue up. You would cast the concrete around the steel reinforcing to make columns, and then the steel reinforcing there would join on to the next part. So it's fairly standard concrete construction, and if you look up there, there's a concrete mixer, I think. There's a concrete mixer over there. So there's the concrete mixer, they're mixing concrete, they're pouring concrete. Concrete frame, and then filling in between, we have what looks like concrete blocks. So we have the heavy concrete frame, providing the main structure, and then infill the walls is just concrete blocks. Cool, cool. So the reason you use concrete blocks like this is because the concrete blocks, they're small enough, I said before, they're small enough for workers to lift and place by hand. So you don't need any heavy machinery to build a concrete block wall. Right? So you would do that if human labor is cheap and cranes are expensive. So one alternative to concrete block walls is just to have a big precast concrete panel. You use a crane to lift it up and kind of put it in place. But the thing is, to have a big concrete panel, precast concrete panel, you need a crane because you can't lift it by hand, right? It's heavy. So if you have a lot of cranes and not that many workers, or like if cranes are cheap and workers are expensive, you would do that. You would like have the cranes do the work, and then the workers kind of just align the thing into place. And you don't need as many workers. Whereas if workers are cheap and cranes are expensive, comparatively, then you have concrete block walls because this is labor intensive. You have like people kind of laying this thing one block at a time. So that takes a long time. It takes a lot of human labor, but you don't need any cranes because the blocks are small enough you can carry them by hand. You see how that works? So the choices of what construction technique you choose depends on the economics, basically. Is labor more expensive than cranes, or are cranes more expensive than labor? And you would choose one or the other. So in this sense, we look at this and we might conclude that human labor is relatively cheap and cranes are kind of expensive. So you don't have a lot of little bits of work being done using cranes, if that makes sense. But also, everything we see so far can be done by ordinary humans, right? You don't need superhuman strength to do any of this. Pouring concrete, laying blocks, and like tools like this, hand saws. So the hand saw, like, it's not a huge hand, like it's not a big heavy thing. So everything can be done by unaugmented humans, just based on our first glance, right? So there's nothing remarkable about that part here. Okay. Oh, there's sand too. So about sand. Dubai is prone to sandstorms. And so the sand up here makes sense, because the sand is gonna accumulate. The fact that there's no sand filters or no protection on the ventilation is probably bad news, because there's sand everywhere. You probably want filters on the fan in Dubai. Okay, well let's get out of this room and get into the main building. We go through some ventilation ducts, although this doesn't really make sense because this is exterior, and I think that's also exterior because there's light there, right? So the ventilation ducts don't lead anywhere. And then we have those fans there. We come through sideways into another big ventilation duct. These don't make any sense, by the way. And then we come through here, and then there's like a vertical ventilation duct that leads nowhere, just goes up to the sky. So these are just standard components that the level designers use to build their levels. I don't think anyone... Oh crap, I fell down. I don't think anyone actually thought about how the actual ventilation works in this building. This is just stuff for you to crawl through, right? Okay, and now we get a better view of this. Yeah, so about this. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna put the turd again. So it's kind of like, you think this seems kind of right, but it's actually not. Look at this. It's flatter, right? It's flatter. this, it's taller. Like, you know the difference between a sports car and a clown car? This is the difference. The difference between like an elegant building and a clown building. The proportions are different. Like, this is just kind of like it's stumpy. You don't want. There's nothing elegant about being stumpy, right? Like long flowing curves is elegant. Stumpy is silly, and this is a little too stumpy. So they kind of did it, but they got the proportions wrong. Okay, that's the last thing I'm gonna say about that. Alright, we have a great vista here. What do we see? Okay, we're gonna talk about cranes. Actually, can I see this? Let me get out of here. So there we have a crane that's kind of fallen over a bit. That's unfortunate. Look at that. We have the palm icon, the palm logo, and then we have the thing. So Dubai, the other thing Dubai is famous for is the palm things, like these things. These things? So this is like a bit of a tourist trap. They created artificial islands in the shape of palm trees, kind of, and they build a bunch of houses and they sell the houses for a lot of money. And then out here there's like resort things, right, around the outside edge. We have like, what is that? A resort there, and then there's like more apartments there, and then there's like resorts there, and there's like I think there's casinos as well. I think there's like a shopping mall there, and a water park there. So this is the Palm, Dubai, right? Palm Jumeirah is what this is called. So that's interesting. Why would that icon be there? I think the implication is that the same company that built the Palm is also building this thing. Or it could be that maybe this is supposed to be another Palm. And maybe this is only one of these branches, and maybe there should be more branches. If there were more branches, it wouldn't look so much like a turd. But anyway, we don't know. This is but it's interesting that they put that there. I think they had some ideas, but they didn't follow through in the game. By the way, it is strange for cranes to be left behind on a construction site. Cranes are designed to be easy to dismantle, right? You kind of put them up, you build the building, and you take them down again. And cranes are worth money. And so even if you abandon a construction project, you would still take down the crane and ship it off because it's worth money, right? So when you abandon construction, you don't literally just drop everything and run away, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that's worth money. So a lot of this stuff in the game, it looks like they just dropped all their tools and ran away. Whereas in reality, if you have to abandon construction, you would send some people in to pick up all the pieces that you can take away. So the cranes you would take down and ship that away. Any hand tools, you would pick that up and take that away. Any building materials that you haven't actually bolted down, you would like pick them up again and just kind of cart them away as well. Because everything's worth money. Like, even if you abandon a project, you don't just leave money lying around. That's silly, right? So the fact that the cranes are still here, not that realistic. Because it's not that hard to take a crane down. They're designed to be taken down. Alright, in the distance we see the sandstorm rolling in. Giant wall of sand there. There's the Dubai skyline. Interesting, although I don't have too much to say about it. At the front here we have... these are tidal power generators, I believe. The tidal turbines... I have looked this up, by the way. There's a thing called the C-Gen. The C-Gen looks like this. So this is when was this? Since 2008. Decommissioned in 2019. So this was a experimental or prototype tidal power facility. And the way this works, you can lift the turbines up out of the water for maintenance. So you like there's a tower thing, and then there's turbines under the water. You can lift the turbines can come up and down, and the turbines run underwater like that. So that's cool, tidal power. And I believe that's what those are meant to be. It's a little strange to have tidal power at this location though. In Dubai. So first of all, we are in the Persian Gulf, and the Persian Gulf doesn't get huge tides, right? Where are we? So the Persian Gulf, you notice it's a dead end, so the water doesn't really flow in and out that much. I mean, there are tides, but they're not exceptional tides. Whereas the CGen, you'll notice it is in the UK. The UK gets much bigger tides. In fact, the UK is surprisingly good for tidal power resources. Like it's one of the best places in the world to put tidal power generators because of how big the tides are. In a lot of other parts of the world, the tides are not as big, and so it's not really worth it while. And secondly, the way they are in the game, the tidal generators are located maybe like there, facing that way. They're facing that way, which doesn't really make sense either, because if you were catching the tide coming in, you'd probably catch them in the narrow bits, because as the tide comes in and out of Dubai Creek, they would flow in the two sides and then flow back out the two sides. So you will imagine if you put a tidal generator in the narrow bits maybe, and as the tide comes in and out, it would funnel through the narrow part, and so you have a stronger current. Maybe like there, maybe like put the tidal generators, along there. That would make more sense. Putting them there doesn't really make sense, especially if they're facing sideways. See what I mean? So it's a little strange the way they're located. Like, it's not that you can't do it, but you wouldn't do it like that. Like, you wouldn't do it like this. And also, Dubai, like the tidal power potential is kind of mediocre, whereas Dubai has a lot of solar potential. Dubai has a lot of potential for solar power and also decent potential for wind power. You can see the sandstorm coming in. So there's a lot of sun and a lot of wind, but not that much tidal potential. So it's strange that they put tidal generators in Dubai. And of course Dubai has oil. Aside from the renewable stuff, it also has oil. So like tidal power, it's cool. It looks cool. It looks like a cool facility. But maybe not in Dubai. Like, or if it is in Dubai, it wouldn't be there. It would be like further that way, further that way. Anyway, it looks cool in the game. Okay. As we come in here, out here we see more of the construction. I can't jump out. We can't jump out. We do have a sniper rifle. We can use to zoom in. Oh, look at that. So we have the concrete frame construction, right? So it's a fairly conventional rectangular concrete frame throughout the whole building. I think we can see it there as well. We can kind of see it there as well. It's more covered up there. That's more open. So that's very conventional. You can see like a concrete columns, concrete floors. The columns look a little thin. I might expect that to be thicker, but it's not crazy. Like you can do that. Like it's not too bad. We have these triangular lattice things. Look at that. Look at that. Not 100% sure what they are here. It looks like the triangular lattice is meant to provide structure for some free-form decorative elements, right? Basically curvy bits. So I think they're supposed to be like curvy bits in the architecture. like decorative curvy bits. And so then you have the triangular mesh that you can bend into shape, and then I guess you would cover it with something, and that would be your curvy architecture bits. I think is how that works, because it seems to be implied that they come in flat sheets, or in kind of flat sheets, and maybe you just kind of hammer them into shape on location. Can we get a closer look at this? Not too sure though. Right, I mean, it looks like there's like metal bits that are, what are these, screwed, bolted together? Yeah, honestly, I'm not really sure what they intend. But if you imagine if, like, these bits is like soft metal, maybe like aluminium or just kind of soft steel, that you can bend relatively easily, but not so easily that it kind of flops around. So it's kind of it's rigid enough that it'll hold the shape, but then if you have like tools, you can just kind of bend them into shape. And so then you have this triangular lattice that you just kind of bend into these shapes, and then you use that to create freeform architectural elements. Maybe. That's what it looks like to me. I haven't seen this done for real, but I imagine this might actually exist somewhere. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any real-world examples of this, but I'm sure there are, actually. I'm sure there are real-world examples of this. Okay, I guess we're going in here. Right, and then we have more of these triangular lattice things. We don't see any of this finished, so it's hard to tell what they really are. Back here we have this side of the hotel. Again, we see the very conventional concrete frame. Oh, the things on the cranes. So we have these heavy loads just swinging back and forth on the cranes. I'm not sure if I believe that, because the AUG incident was like 2 years ago. So this place has been abandoned for 2 years. In 2 years, I think those loads would have fallen down by now. Because cranes, yes, cranes are designed to lift heavy loads, but they're not designed to be permanent, right? So the cranes, they're gonna fall down or they're gonna drop their loads. They're not that sturdy. I don't think, because they rely on hydraulics, don't they? And hydraulics, after a while, they would fail without maintenance. So yeah, no, I don't think. Like, it looks cool. Oh, we just have things swinging in the wind. Oh, how melancholy. Yeah, but you know, in the real world, if you leave that there for 2 years, it'll probably fall down. It would probably. So that's a little bit silly. And also the cranes, you would just remove the cranes, because the cranes are worth money. You wouldn't leave that lying around. And also the scaffolding too. Again, scaffolding is worth money. And the fact that they just have like scaffolding just sitting there for 2 years and nobody came to just pick them up and sell them. A little bit dubious, some of this stuff. Anyway, we do have a good opportunity to look at how these things are constructed in here though. Look at this. So we have this light metal framing. So in between the heavy concrete frames, we have the light metal frame. And then we have, what is this, plasterboard? Or in the United States you call it drywall. So it looks like we have plasterboard on light metal frame, and it's screwed into place. You have screws there. So again, like pretty conventional stuff, nothing too fancy. So I live in New Zealand. In New Zealand there'll be timber frame and plasterboard because there's more trees in New Zealand. In Dubai there aren't that many trees, so I guess steel frame makes sense, right? If we look up here, should I just climb up here? It's not clear what's going on above this. So the columns keep going up, right? Oh, that's what that implies. So there's more floors above us? Possibly? And like there's like a steel beam in between the concrete beams. I'm not sure what that's for either. Like, is that permanent? In other parts of this, we'll see later on, they mix and match the concrete and steel, which you really wouldn't do in real life, because like concrete uses one set of equipment and requires one set of skills, right? You have workers who are specialized in pouring concrete, right? That's one kind of worker. And then you have a different kind of worker who are specialized in working with steel, and that's a different skill set. So a different group of people with different tools and a different skill set. And so if you're building a building, you would just make everything steel or everything concrete, because you have one group of guys with one set of tools doing all the work. Like if you have like concrete column and steel column and concrete column and steel, like concrete beam and steel beam and concrete beam, like you mix and match, then you need like two groups of people with two different sets of machinery, two different sets of tools, working in the same space and trying to get it. It just gets really complicated and confusing. So it's a like logistically it's a pain in the ass to mix and match with materials like this. If you just like stick to one thing, then okay, we have one group of guys, they're pouring concrete, they know what they're doing, and there's no one else getting in the way, and that just makes things much easier logistically on the building site, right? So yeah, like mixing and matching concrete and steel is a strange choice. Not something that I would recommend. What do we have? Oh. Yeah, so this is the light steel frame and the plasterboard, right? So it's pretty cheap and fairly conventional. You wouldn't put this stuff in. You wouldn't start putting the light steel frame in when you haven't put the other floor in yet. So talking about like construction sequencing, the sequencing of construction, you have like a floor, right? You kind of put in the columns, you put in the next floor, and then after the floor is in, then you do the interiors, right? Because what happens is you get rained on. I guess in Dubai it doesn't rain that much, but like things can fall and like you might have accidents and you might destroy the stuff like you did like this. You don't put in the plasterboard until you've enclosed the building, because otherwise this can easily get damaged. Plasterboard is not sturdy stuff, like you can punch through it with your hand. And so you put that in after you've gotten all your heavy machinery out of the way. So like the floor is heavy work, right? The columns is heavy work. The next floor is heavy work. So once the next floor is in and you've done the next columns, then anything you drop above is not going to fall through the floor and break your plasterboard underneath, right? So the way you sequence the work is, until you've got the floor in up there, you don't start putting in plasterboard here, because you're going to damage it. If anything goes wrong, if you drop stuff, you're going to break this stuff. So like the delicate stuff, you make sure your building, your structural stuff is all in place before you put in any delicate stuff, like the plasterboard and like this stuff. this bendy triangle stuff, you don't put this in until like the floor is done above you. So this is the sequencing of this is a little odd, and not recommended, right? Like you would finish that before you start putting these in, because this light steel framing, it's not sturdy. You can like if you stick a sledgehammer, you can just wreck it, right? It's thin stuff. Like it's meant to hold the plasterboard up. It's not meant to be structural or anything. So it's very easy to damage it, actually. So just a lot of details like that is interesting to look at. Okay. So let's go through here. So once we're through here, we start looking at the interiors. We have scaffolding. Again, scaffolding is designed to be dismantled, and they're worth money, so you would probably come in and dismantle it and take it away, and not just leave it here. Scaffolding like this. It's worth money, man. It's leaving money lying around. The portable toilets are worth money. You're just leaving money lying around. Okay, so now we start getting into interiors. There's an arch going on up there. There are more arches inside. I'll look at that later on, I guess. Not too much to say about this. Oh, so the game here teaches you to punch through the wall. This door is blocked, so it teaches you to punch through the wall. This is wrong. This wall is wrong. So you see these are concrete blocks, right? And you see these, you imagine that these blocks are these blocks, which they should be. Except here, where you punch through the wall, there's steel reinforcing inside a very thin concrete wall. And then there's another layer of, I don't know what that is. And then the concrete block is apparently just a very, very thin sheet on the surface. And then there's like 3 layers of concrete things. And then there's reinforcing in the middle. What? So whoever made this asset just doesn't know anything about concrete block construction. It should just be these blocks, right? It should just be these blocks held together lightly with the grout. And if you punch through it, if you're strong enough, you just like the entire block just shatters and just the blocks just fly off. So this hole in the wall is completely wrong structurally. And I don't know who made this, but whoever did this doesn't know anything about construction. Yeah, anyway. Not everybody on the art team understands construction. So we get to here, this appears to be some sort of equipment room. So we have heavy electrical equipment. This is mostly for tutorial purposes because like a lot of this, there's a lot of empty space for no reason. And this space is really tall for no reason. So what this space does is teaching you about environmental hazards like the electricity. It's teaching you about climbing up and down. And then if we get over here, it's teaching you about switches. So this is a tutorial area to teach you game mechanics. And that's the only reason why this would make sense, because otherwise none of this makes sense. Like this thing, like this is a cable duct, and there's a hole there for the cable. that doesn't make sense. Like why is this on this side of the wall and then these other stuff on the other side of the wall? Like why is this wall here? So none of this makes any sense, but it's a tutorial, so it's teaching you how to climb and pull switches, right? And they put in this triangular stuff here. I think they overuse this because they're just putting in like everywhere, even though it makes no sense for the triangular stuff to be here. They're just putting it everywhere because it looks cool, right? Alright, let's go through here. Alright, so now we have some actual architectural interiors. This is when we start to get to the fancy parts of the resort, right? So what do we have? We have circular columns. It's probably concrete. That says forms. What does that say? Building forms. 12-inch... Hold on. 12-inch something. Hold on. 12-inch modular spacing. Building forms. So that's, I think, it's modular formwork. Or it implies that it's modular formwork. Formwork is concrete. When you mix it, it's liquid, right? So you have the shape, the formwork, which is a rigid shape, and then you pour the liquid into the shape, and then when the concrete sets, you take the formwork away, and it's that shape. So that's formwork. I think that's what this is. I mean, it's what it says on the label. Although, I'm not sure. This might be just cast in place. So they might not remove this stuff. You don't necessarily have to remove the formwork. You might just have like a tube, pour the concrete in, and just leave the tube there. and just cover the tube with something else. And I think that's what's happening here, so that's the formwork is kind of just built into the building and you don't remove it. And then like at the bottom of the columns you have this foam stuff, styrofoam tied to the column. And this is to protect the column, right? So like if you're driving a forklift around, you don't accidentally smash into the column. You don't damage the forklift for one, and you don't damage the column. So you have the styrofoam in place to prevent accidents from doing too much damage. So that's what the columns are about. We have these arches. So we have the light steel framing again. And we are making arch shapes with the light steel framing. So this is purely for aesthetics. Because arches make sense if you're working with stone. You know how arches work, right? The arch, like, because of the shape of the arch, every piece is pushing against every other piece. So if you make an arch out of individual blocks of stone, it will stand up by itself because everything is compressive, everything is pushing against everything else. So arches, like, they have a structural logic if you're working with stone or bricks or anything like that. Steel does not require arches, not like this. So like if you have like a really big steel bridge, you might have a steel arch bridge, okay. But then the steel are quite small compared to the size of the arch. Here, the steel pieces are quite big compared to the size of the arch, so this is purely decorative. You can have just a horizontal piece of steel and they'll be fine. So this arch is purely for decorative purposes. And we can see that it's going to be the same light metal framing with plasterboard on it. Purely ornamental. And then up there, so that's the concrete beam, right? We have a circular concrete shape, interesting, and then on top of that we have a steel glass thing. The glass is not in yet. I guess you have put the glass into the frame later. So there's a skylight, a steel frame skylight above the concrete is what that looks like. Right? Right. What did my notes say? Oh, the pointed arch is an Islamic thing, or a Middle Eastern thing. The Romans had semicircular arches, and I guess the Gothic architecture also has pointed arches. So after the Romans, the arches turned from semicircular to pointed, and that's just like construction things. Semicircular arches is it's a little bit more complicated to set into shape. Like it's simpler to draw, and it's simpler to carve the stone pieces, but when you build the thing, you need to put the keystone correctly. Whereas the pointed stuff, you just have like the 2 bits of stone on either side. Whereas with the semicircular stuff, you need like one keystone in the middle. Just mathematically, it's just kind of a little bit more complicated in that sense. Not a big deal. It's just kind of construction techniques, right? Okay, moving through here. Is there anything to say about this space? Not really. So we have a double height space, which is very fancy. I guess... Why? I don't know actually. I mean, there's more hotel back there. Can't really tell what these spaces are. But in terms of gameplay, there's like a secret area up here. Oh, here's what I was talking about, right? You have like concrete and steel and concrete and concrete. And why is that steel? Why isn't that also concrete? Like you just randomly have a piece of steel here? Because the thing, like concrete, you pour it, right? You have to form work and then you pour the concrete. Like that's one set of equipment. The steel, you have a crane bringing this piece of steel up and putting it in place, and then the steel guy bolts it down. That's a different set of equipment. It's just the crane versus the concrete. Yeah. Why wouldn't you also just have a concrete column there if you need a column? Just have another concrete column. You're already pouring concrete. Why don't you just pour more concrete? It's so easy. So the mix and match is very silly, architecturally speaking. And here as well, like you have steel bits. And you already have the concrete frame, and then you put an extra steel bit in here, and an extra steel bit. Why are there extra steel bits? Doesn't really make any sense. Well, actually, this bit actually, see the triangle bits? So this is lateral bracing. So when you have a building, so the vertical bits, you resist gravity with the vertical bits. But then when the wind blows on it, the building wants to go like this, and wants to stop the whole building from just kind of flopping over. If you like, the wind pushes on it. So the triangle bits, that's to stop the building from flopping over, right? So that could make sense as lateral bracing. But then it's only in this area, it's not in any of the other areas. So buildings, often what happens is they have a structural core, and they'll be around the stairwell and the lift, right? So there's like a strong structural core with diagonal bracing, and then the floors will hang off the structural core, and there won't be bracing out here, because you only need to brace one part of the building to stop the whole thing from falling over. So this might be the core, and this might be the bracing. And maybe that's why they're mixing and matching the steel bits in here. But if they were, like, you would have the diagonal stuff down here as well, wouldn't you? You would. It wouldn't just be up there, it would be like all the way down. So like you can kind of like make sense of this, but also it's a little bit strange. Not too sure what's going on here, but it could be. It could just be the lateral bracing. Maybe. And again, there's like, why is there a sheet of triangular lattice in there? Okay, let's keep moving. So now we go into the penthouses, and beyond the penthouses there's the atrium. So we were at the rooftops. Let's go down to the penthouses. In the game, this is where you start to meet the enemies, so there's like a big long elevator ride. I think they talk to you in the game and tell you, oh, there's enemies ahead. Anyway, going through. So now we have, look at that. Look at all the triangular lattice stuff on the ceiling, although it's kind of flat though. So I'm not sure why they're using that there, because it's completely flat anyway. We have more of these circular columns, and now we're a bit lower down. Looking out the window, we're down at this bit, so the water's down there, and we are just a couple of floors down, right? So the concrete frame is double height, it looks like. And actually we can come through this, look at this here. So without any of the architectural stuff, it looks like that. Although this is wrong because the columns don't line up with the beams. You need a column. So the column should be at the junctions of the beams. So somehow they made it so that the beams and the columns don't line up, which is strange. Basically it's just a rectangular concrete frame with stuff filled in between. And here we can see again the light metal frame and the plasterboard, right? You can see how they build the shape with the metal frame and then they fill in with the plasterboard. And it's just like plasterboard on both sides, and it's just kind of empty space in between. So the plasterboard itself is very light, you don't need a lot of thickness. But what they're doing is they're making it artificially thick to make it look more impressive. Later on, as we go inside, you'll see what they're gonna do with this. We have some electrical cables too, that's interesting. So you'd put the electrical in between the walls, obviously. I guess that's gonna be a light there. And the light fixture will go there, the cables would wire that up. Cool. It's cool that we see the wiring going in as well. Not sure what that's about. So they have temporary scaffolding holding up something, but I don't know why that's there. I honestly don't. What is this? Is that plasterboard or is this concrete? I think this is plasterboard too. They're all different sizes, I'm not sure what's going on. Like, what's actually concrete and what's plasterboard? It's kind of hard to tell because they're the same color, huh? This is curious. We have like a big arch, but then in the middle of the arch there's like a solid panel. I guess this will be glass later on, and then the actual door is there. So not the whole arch is the door, only this is the door. But you have a big arch shape, the door inside. Right, curious? Oh, here we go, look at that. So now we see what's going on with this triangular lattice. What I said about the organic shapes, look at that, oh look at that curvy bit. So what it looks like is, as I said, you have this big sheet of triangular lattice, and you just kind of bend the bits at the joints until you get the curvy shape that you want, and then you just kind of install the whole thing onto the ceiling or something. And I don't know what you'd surface it with. You might shrink wrap it with plastic. It actually works, by the way. Like just kind of put plastic on top of it, or I guess you could plaster it. Although I'm not sure how well that works. Paper mache? Could be paper mache. I don't know how you would like make it a solid surface, but at least you have structure. The structure of a curvy shape using the triangular lattice like this. So I think it's meant to just create big curvy shapes. I'm not sure that it fits in with the rest of the structure, because the rest of the structure is very rectangular. And like there's columns, there's arches, there's floors. So occasionally there's curvy bits. The game doesn't really... like the building's not complete enough for us to see how that fits in. But we can see how this is used, right? So that's kind of cool. Coming through here... look at these windows. So look at that. The windows, the glass was actually in place. The glass was in place and it got broken afterwards, which is a shame. But these are all windows, and look at that. There's curved bits in the windows. The window, the glass is going to curve down. When's the last time you saw curved glass in architecture? It's not that you can't do it, but you have to make custom curved glass, and that's expensive, right? Usually you just have flat pieces of glass, and that you just buy that from a shop. You buy it from a hardware store. Like flat pieces of glass, everybody uses that. Curved glass, you have to specially make curved glass for this particular building. So that's expensive. And it's interesting that they put expensive curved glass in here, because everything else is so cheap, right? Everything else is just like flat plasterboard, light steel framing. Even that, this is not that expensive. The triangular lattice that you just kind of bend into shape, that's not that expensive. And if you look at this, look at this. Oh, this is cool, look at this. So remember the columns? So you have like the columns, and I said we might keep the formwork in place and just have the concrete columns, formwork in place, and then you have this like a steel ribcage, steel frame around it, and then a very thin layer of stone. I don't know if it's even stone. It could be just imitation stone. very thin layer of imitation stone to make it look like a stone column. So it looks like a curvy stone column that's been carved out, but actually it's just a very, very thin layer, a thin shell. And then this stuff, again, that looks like fancy stone, that looks like fancy marble, right? Oh, look at this fancy stuff. So it looks like fancy stone, but we know that this is just steel frame and plasterboard inside. So there's a very thin veneer of what looks like fancy stone on top of the plasterboard. So this is like literally skin deep. So this is... So when it's finished, it's supposed to look like expensive stone, but actually we know, because we've seen inside, it's like a very thin layer on top of plasterboard. So everything is just fake. It's just like a thin veneer. So given that this is so cheap, right? I find it curious that they would spend the money on curved glass. Because if they're saving money like this on all the other stuff, why would they spend a lot of money on this stuff? Interesting choice. Interesting choice. Moving through. Oh, that's glass 2. Man, so the windows were in place. So this thing was almost complete before the aug incident hit, and then it got abandoned. Like, that's almost complete, right? So in here we have some penthouse apartments. So look at this. It looks like, oh, it's a stone column. No, it's just a very thin veneer. And you have like the light fixings, the wire for the light fixings here. So the penthouse apartment, you walk in, there's immediately a grand staircase. Downstairs there's probably gonna be a kitchen and lounge. Probably dining? Actually, where's the kitchen? I'm not sure where the kitchen is. So the kitchen, you might have a lot of pipes for the water. The sink would need pipes. We don't see any pipes. Oh, maybe here? With the kitchen? No, this can't be kitchen. This is not kitchen stuff. This is the entry. I guess the TV would go there, maybe? So we don't see any pipes. So I mean, if the kitchen had to be somewhere, it might be here. Kitchen here, dining, lounge. Oh, this. Look at that. So this concrete thing, concrete mixing thing, has smashed the window here and broken the window frame there. So about construction sequencing. Remember what I said earlier about you want to like finish the heavy stuff before you put in the fragile stuff? Like you want to put in the floors, the columns, the floors, maybe the walls, and then you put in the fragile stuff. So the glass on the outside, you really should put that in last. Because accidents happen, and if an accident happens, you don't want to smash all the glass and then have to replace the glass, right? So what I mean is, you wouldn't put in the glass until you finished pouring the concrete. So this is for carrying like they're carrying concrete up to the higher floors, right? So you would want to finish that before you put the glass in, because otherwise you have an accident, you smash the glass, and then you lose a lot of money. Yeah, so this is cautionary. Oh, also, looking this way, remember the Burj Khalifa to the west is that way. So on this side, we see that we are actually in a lake, if we take our sniper rifle out. So that is land, right? There's buildings there, there's buildings there. That's land. The water stops there. So we're not out in the open ocean. So based on that, that's correct, kind of. So remember how I said we're probably somewhere here? So there's like land on both sides. So we are probably in Dubai Creek. Although the shape of all of this stuff is kind of wrong. Oh, what's that? Hey, maybe that's the harbor there. Maybe that's this harbor there. So maybe we're here? We might be here. Right, that's to the south. That stuff there. Okay. Alright, we have located where we are. Although having said that, if we are there, then this piece of art is a bit strange. Because it seems to show a much bigger water area. You know what I mean? It doesn't show any land on that side. Whereas here, we're actually quite close to land on that side. So a little strange, but I think we've solved that puzzle. Alright, upstairs. Oh, look at this stuff. It looks really fancy, doesn't it? Upstairs, we have, what is this, wood paneling? Oh yeah, fancy stuff. Unfortunately, we know that it's only a thin veneer. Like this shiny metal doorway. We have a bathroom here, there's the bath. The shower there. And we're gonna have sinks here. Right? Oh, look how fancy it looks. And then I guess this would be the bedroom. Right? Oh, the concrete blocks are falling off. Wait, why would it fall off like this? Why would that fall off like that? That's a little strange. Why would it like it would do that if there was some kind of explosion, some like some force just kind of pushed all the blocks sideways. But what would do that? Anything that broke that would also break this wall, right? So I'm not sure why that's kind of just bending out like that. Anyway, we do see the concrete block construction here properly though. Right, very interesting. Let's get back outside. Is there anything to say upstairs? Not really. I mean, again, we can see the steel frame and the plasterboard in there. So behind the fancy stone veneer, there's this stuff. Alright, let's get back down. I'm just gonna jump off. So moving towards the middle of this level, we have a big central atrium in between the two penthouses. There's another penthouse there. In between the two penthouses, there's a middle bit. So this is kind of cool. There's a few things here. First we have structural glass. Ah, structural glass. So what is structural glass? Glass is not that structural. It's a little bit structural, it's not that structural. Like, it's not that strong, but glass is strong enough to hold up other glass. So in order to maximize the transparency, what people sometimes choose to do is they have glass bits holding up other glass bits. And then in between the glass bits you have these fixtures. So you bolt onto the glass there, and then you bolt onto the glass there, and that holds the glass in place. And I guess you should seal in between too, because otherwise it would leak water. So it's kind of bolted at the corners, and then the glass holds itself up. And I think this is especially thick too, so they make this like maybe triple thick to give it enough strength to hold that glass up. So instead of having like a window frame, which would block the view a little bit, you have the glass acting as a window frame, and the glass is more transparent. So that's what that is. I think that's mostly right. I'm not sure if there's enough fixtures. Like, I might put in some extra fixtures in the middle there, just for a bit more strength. I mean, there's like one there, and I guess one at the corners. And I'm not sure if that's strong enough. Just having 4 pins at the corners like that. It might be okay. Maybe I'm just being overly cautious. So that's cool. Structural glass. Oh, hey, this bit's broken. So this window has been smashed. So if you lose one panel, I think it seriously compromises the whole thing. If you lose one of those. because it's bracing against each other, right? And once you lose one, it loses a lot of stability. So it's probably oh, that's broken too. This whole thing might fall down soon. Yeah, I don't think you should do that with structural glass. That weakens the whole thing by a lot. Anyway, we have a very shiny thing up on the ceiling. What is that, an egg? A shiny egg on the ceiling, but it's probably only a thin sheet on top of plasterboard, as always. Some ceiling carvings. And then back here we have this stuff, which is a little curious. I don't know if you guys can tell. Oh, here we have the window frame. So here, instead of the structural glass, they put in a metal frame. So you see how it's less transparent. Like you can compare this with that. Oh, that's much cooler. Much fancier than that. Don't know why they didn't put the structural glass there as well. Alright, so about this. Is this odd to you? Is this as odd to you as it is to me? So what I think they've done is they've tried to do some sort of like traditional Islamic architecture fused with futuristic modern architecture. Like some sort of like a sci-fi futuristic fusion with Islamic architecture, I think. And it does kind of make sense, because if you remember back in the first game, it was like a Renaissance. It was like a neo-Renaissance. They took like Renaissance fashion, they took bits and pieces from Renaissance architecture, and they kind of mixed and matched it with, or they fused it with like futuristic high-tech architecture. And I think they're trying to do a similar thing here. I'm just not sure if I'm convinced about this though. Like the shape is kind of... doesn't look very cool. like this bit, and then this bit, and then this bit. Like I'm not sure about this. Like I look at it and I don't think, oh wow, that's really cool. I don't think that. I look at it and I look, okay, okay. And like this, like this, and this, and like that. It's like I don't know. There's something. Maybe it's just not intricate enough. Maybe it's a little too thick. It's a little too dense. It's like a crayon drawing instead of like fine pen work. Does that make sense? Because like this, these carving things, like this stuff, you have like intricate carving, like this is very intricate. And then this stuff next to it is just thick. It's just thick and flat and dumb, man. And then like that's kind of intricate there. So like this, if this was more detailed somehow, more intricate, if this part was more intricate, maybe. Or just thinner, if that was thinner maybe. Or maybe if it was like glowing, if they put lights, LEDs. Oh, LEDs. Like if this was like rippling light or something. Oh, that would be cool, put LEDs in here. But just like that, it looks a little thick. I'm being critical, like I'm being an art critic here. That's just my sense. I don't know, maybe you disagree. If you disagree with me, you are free to disagree with my aesthetic sense. I just feel like it's a little thick and not future enough, right? It doesn't scream cyberpunk to me. And then these columns, why do they change directions? Like they go one way and then they go the other way. Why did they do that? Why don't you just go the same way all the way up? What is the point of breaking the rhythm and have it go the other way? There are some design choices that I have to question. Anyway, it's not a big deal. but it irks me a little bit. It irks me just a little bit. Okay. So moving on, the other side is basically a mirror image of this side. I don't think there's anything really new for us to say. It's basically the same thing for the rest of the building. Let me just walk in here. There's another penthouse on this side. But I think it's pretty much the same. It's mirror image. Right, so the stairs on this side this time. But otherwise, it's the same thing, right? Bathroom. Or is it slightly different? Wait a minute, it's slightly different, isn't it? It's slightly different. Not different enough to be remarkable. Right, back down. And pretty much the same thing. Alright, and then coming through here. So this is... I should probably point this out as well. So as we go past the middle atrium, we go into the... go underneath the superstructure here. If you remember the... not that one. So the middle atrium is about there, and once we go past it, we go underneath this superstructure, if that makes sense. Can you see that? It's kind of small there, isn't it? If you look at this one... you can't see it there. There's more concept art. Actually, looking at this, it's a different scale, isn't it? So this is double height, and it is double height again. Yeah, no, the concept art is much bigger than the level in-game. This is huge. The concept art is huge. The building there is massive. Even bigger than this. So, translating from the concept art to the in-game level, they kind of shrunk everything. Anyway, now we're inside the superstructure. Getting to here. There's pipes. Isn't that overly complicated? That's overly complicated. Why would you have pipes doing that? What are those pipes? Look, you need pipes in buildings, but obviously you want to have pipes to be as simple as possible. You just have straight pipes. And why do you have that many pipes? Because every one of those pipes has to link to something. It's just unnecessarily complicated plumbing. Never mind, don't pay too much attention to that. And also, it's kind of disappointing they don't make more of this triangular lattice stuff. There's like one area where they made the curvy bits, and then in every other part it's just flat. And I'm like, why did they put it in if it's just flat? I want to see what the curvy shapes are gonna look like. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff here that it's just a little bit off. Alright, through here. There's a big tall doorway into this. So this doesn't seem to fit. I think this was something else that they made before and they put it in here. I forgot what this was. In here, what does it say? Environment designed for the Cyber Renaissance room. So this is like a Cyber Renaissance room. What does it say? The room of the hotel just prior to the atrium is referred to in concept art as the Cyber Renaissance room. The room is also featured environment in Deus Ex Mankind Divided VR experience. So I think it's like a different thing that they made for something else that is kind of shoehorned into this level. Because the architecture is different. Look at that. All the arches are semicircular now. So now we have Roman arches, whereas everything back here is Islamic arches. We have the pointed bit at the top. So the architecture is completely different. Semicircular door. And the materials are different, whereas before we have the stone veneers and the gold and the carvings. Now everything's just black metal. Is it metal? I guess it's black metal. And we have like Roman columns, Greek columns. I guess these are Roman columns. It's Ionic. And they're just hanging column pieces from the ceiling. I assume these are actually polystyrene, because otherwise how would you hang heavy? Like, it's not real stone, right? It's polystyrene, right? Except this one supposedly fell down and smashed the glass. If it's polystyrene, it wouldn't smash the glass, because it'd be really light. So I don't understand how any of this makes any sense. Is it supposed to be actual stone? Why would it be actual stone? And if it's actual stone, that's not really strong enough to hold it up? Unless it's solid steel arches, like the arches are semicircular. So none of this really fits. But they just kind of shoehorned a different level into here. I think it's supposed to be like broken columns in a desert. I think this is supposed to symbolize the desert, sand. Something ruins in the desert, I think is what they're talking about here. It doesn't really fit the rest of the building. Anyway, there's an art installation that they put in here. And that is the end of the Dubai level, the Desert Jewel level. Beyond here is a boss fight. I'm not gonna go through there because we can't just look at the architecture. Once you go in there, there's a boss fight, and then after the boss fight, the level ends, and you can't stay, and so you can't just kind of walk around and look at it. There's basically a big glass atrium, but architecturally it's just the same stuff, but it's just like a tall space. Tall atrium with an elevator, basically. Alright, let me go back and find a nice view, and then we'll summarize the whole level. Where should we go? Back to the central atrium? Alright, let's stand here. Look at the sunset. Oh yeah! Stare at the sun! Okay, so that's the Dubai Desert Jewel. Overall, we have a fancy resort hotel in the water. Not in the ocean, but in the Dubai Creek, which is itself already a bit odd. So the resort hotel was almost completed. And in fact, if you look down there, look at that. All the glass is in place. The glass is in place. Usually when the glass is in place, the building is basically finished. Maybe there's a bit of interior to do, but like the foundations, finished. Main structure, finished. Even the glass is in place, only final detailing is required. And like, right when the building was almost completely finished, maybe we're like 80%, 85% finished, the AUG incident happened and the whole thing was abandoned. I'm not sure I buy that story actually, because you could finish this thing without augmentations, but you can just have normal human workers finish this. It's not like any of the construction work requires any special augmentation abilities, right? Because it's just what everything, all the construction stuff we saw so far could be done by humans, normal humans. And the fact that it's almost finished anyway, it's kind of strange that they just abandoned the whole thing, even though it's almost finished. Anyway, it's almost completed and abandoned. I think it's very interesting that they have like a half-finished building, or an almost finished building, that we could walk through and look at all the construction details and all the construction methods that are going on here. Like, you know, the concrete frame, and then like the light steel framing, and then the drywall, and then the stone veneers. You can see how the building is put together, so that's cool. It's cool to see like construction happening and be able to just kind of talk about how buildings are put together. The fact that it's expensive looking veneers over cheap plasterboard is very funny. The fact that it looks a lot fancier than it actually is, it looks a lot more expensive than it actually is, very funny. So in Deus Ex, there are two big themes. Or, no, I think there are two big themes. I think one of the big themes in Deus Ex is the beautiful lie. The beautiful lie. The beautiful lie is where something looks very impressive on the surface, but when you look under the surface, it's very ugly. Right? That's the beautiful lie. And you know, it's important that when you lie, you tell a beautiful lie, because you want people to believe the lie, right? So it's something that you wish was true. Like a beautiful lie is where even though you know it's not true, even if you know it's not true, you wish it was true. And architecturally here, we have the beautiful stone veneer, like a very thin veneer over the plasterboard. So that's the beautiful lie, right? It's like, oh, look at the fancy resort hotel that we built using org labor, right? But actually, if you look underneath, first of all, it's just a thin veneer, and second of all, none of the construction work actually requires org labor. Like, none of it requires augmented workers. It all could have been done by human workers. So the beautiful lie, right? So there's that. And the other big theme of Deus Ex, I think, is squandered potential, right? So the idea that augmentation could unlock limitless potential, like you can be whatever you want, because you can just augment your body. If you're weak, you just put artificial muscles in your body and you become strong. If you're stupid, you just put an augmentation in your brain and you make yourself smart, right? You can just be whatever, do whatever. So the idea that, oh, there's so much potential, you can do anything, but somehow it's all wasted. Somehow it's completely ruined in the end. And that's what happened here, right? Like oh, look at this beautiful resort hotel out in the water. And then, but right as we are about to finish the whole thing, the org incident happened and everything fell apart, and then we abandoned the whole thing. And so you have something that was about to look really impressive, and then you just gave up. And now it's falling to ruins. So the beautiful lie and the squandered potential, so those things are all embodied in this level, and the architecture is completely in line with those themes, right? So that's cool. I like that. I like it when, you know, you look at the architecture and it fits. It fits the theme, it fits the story. So that's cool. Yeah, like a lot of potential corrupted and ruined by greed and petty conflict. That's Deus Ex. So it's very cool to see how the architecture works. I do have a few complaints. First of all, it looks like a turd. I've said this already. Let's just look at this again, okay? Like this friggin' thing. It's not just me, right? It looks like a poop, right? It does. It looks like poop. And the main problem, as I said, they made this, but they didn't draw the rest of the building. And so the guy who made the assets for the game, they made this and they didn't make anything else. Because they didn't draw anything else, so they didn't make anything else. And that just looks like a turd. So that's my first complaint. I can't believe they did that. Like they could have just copied and pasted it a few more times to make it not look like a turd. Anyway. Alright, so that's... Yeah, well, you know, I've said what I've said. Secondly, my second complaint is that the construction techniques used in this building are all very conventional. Right, as we said over and over again, there's nothing here that couldn't be done by ordinary humans, right? You don't need augmentations to build any of this. Like these stuff, like this stuff, like these boxes, you can carry these. Right, you can use forklifts to carry the stuff around. Like none of this is. So you look at this and you're not seeing anything that really wows you, if that makes sense. You know, like, because look, augmentation, man. I would have loved to see stuff that couldn't be done by humans. Stuff where you look at it and you're like, wow, how did they do that? That seems impossible. Like, you look at it and wow, that seems impossible. You know, imagine like if instead of like concrete blocks that we all are familiar with, imagine if there's like big blocks of stone, and the big blocks of stone are just being piled up, just being used to build the building. And you look at like the pile of stone, and you're like, wait a minute, it's too heavy for any human to lift, right? Like you have like massive blocks of stone, and you just see them being moved around, or you see evidence of it just being moved around. But there's no way any human could have just moved these things around because they're so heavy, right? And so you look at it as like, wow, that's crazy, man. Like, how did they do that? Right? And like, you imagine you have like things that are too heavy, too big, but they're also too intricate for machines, right? So maybe they're fragile, or they're easy to break, or maybe the shapes of them are awkward, so that like it's hard to fit them on the crane. And so you're like, well, how did they do that? And it turns out it's just a really like a big robot guy doing this stuff, right? And imagine if some of these dead bodies, I mean, there are dead bodies lying around. I don't know if you see them. Look, dead bodies. Okay, so that's not augmented. So not him. But some of these dead people, they're augmented, right? Like imagine if you have like a dude with really big augmented arms, and you see him next to the giant stone block, and you're like, okay, I get it. This guy with his machine empowered arms is moving these giant blocks around like some sort of god, like Hercules, like Atlas, lifting the world, you know, like superhuman strength. Like you want to see this stuff because it's cool, man. Because we're talking about science fiction, right? Science fiction. In your science fiction, you want to see something that you know doesn't exist in the real world. Whereas everything in the level that we see exists in the real world. All the architecture we see in this level can exist in the current world. And so it's just missing that kind of mystical factor. You see what I mean? It's missing that part where you look at it and it's like, wow, that's cool. Like that part is missing. I feel like. So that's a bit of a shame. I wish they just put something to really wow you. You know, I'm gonna say the same thing for most of the game. I'm just thinking ahead to the next few levels. It's gonna be like this for most of the game. I think it's a missed opportunity for the whole game, actually. Is that there's nothing that really makes you think that it's not possible today. Alright, there's nothing you look at it, it's like, no, that's not possible. In the first game, okay, I'm ranting a little bit, just give me a few minutes. In the first game, in Deus Ex Human Revolution, you go to Panchaea, you're like, okay, wow, you can't do that. Like, you can understand it, but you know it can't be done with today's technology. It's future technology. Or you go to Hengsha. Remember Hengsha? Hengsha was like the island in Shanghai where there's an island, there's a city, and then there's a massive plate, and then there's another city on top. So Taiyang Medical just built a giant metal plate on top of the old city and built a new city on top of the old city. So that's like, you look at it, it's like, holy crap, you can't do that. So like, you look at it, wow, I can't believe they did that. Or like Panchaea, a giant concrete tube down to the bottom of the ocean, you're like, wow, I can't like, you look at it, it's like, that's crazy. You look at this, it's like, okay, it's impressive. It's not that impressive. It's impressive, but I can see how they did it. I can see it's possible. There's nothing impossible here. Like, if that's possible, this is of course possible. And this is already in the real world. So the architecture here is less impressive than what we already have. And that's not cool. When you're talking about like a science fiction video game, you want to see the science fiction. You want to see the wow. Does that make sense? Okay, I hope that makes sense. Anyway, that's the end of the Dubai level. I'm gonna stop ranting here. In the next video, we are going to Prague in the Czech Republic. I will see you next time.